radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 136, recorded on Friday, October 4th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we're going to discuss the heartbreaking end of the Brewers season.
Ugh, come on, you didn't have to bring that up. It's not in the script.
Hey,
I didn't talk about it.
Hey, if we start low, it only gets better from here. No, today we're going to talk about something so much happier. The vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance.
I thought you were going to say the Vikings starting 4-0 and beating the Packers.
I mean, we could. You know what? Like, we should probably talk because that's a legit positive story.
For one of us.
You know what? Even for me. I'm a Packers fan, and I can appreciate the Vikings doing really well.
Well, as a dual Vikings and Brewers fan, I am always waiting for doom. So I will never be happy. I know it's coming. That's why I won't be surprised when they collapse. All the people will be like, haha, everybody thought they were going to go to the Super Bowl when they were 4-0. Not me.
And trust me, most Vikings fans don't either.
Right. Most Vikings fans that lived through the 90s.
But see, that's the problem, though, with teams like the Brewers and the Vikings. So because we have the traumatized fan bases, and then everyone's like, oh, you think they're going to go? Like, no, they're not. You know how this always goes. But then they keep going and they keep doing well. And then it gets to the place maybe they could do something.
Okay. I literally said in, what was that? I think it was 2011, the second.
Oh, yeah.
The first Favre year on the Vikings. I broke every Vikings fan rule.
And you
sitting
hoped.
In my living room with my wife, I said, I think they might actually go to the Super Bowl right before Brett Favre threw an interception.
Yeah. Oh, no.
And they had a penalty for having 12 men on the field when they were in field goal range to win that game. And then they got knocked out of field goal range with a penalty. And then Brett Favre threw the interception. Right before that sequence of events, I said the words, they might actually go to the Super Bowl.
See?
Yeah. So never again.
It hurts.
Never again.
But before we talk all about that,
enough sports.
The headlines.
Nobody's ever called me weird. I'm a lot of things, but weird I'm not. No, we're not weird people. We're actually just the opposite.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Let's start off the headlines by talking a little bit about Hurricane Helene. Sadly, the southeastern U.S. has been hit pretty hard by Hurricane Helene. So far, over 200 people have died, with many, many more still missing, making it one of the deadliest hurricanes for the U.S.
I actually have a niece in Florida with her family, my former brother-in-law, and they did have some damage to their vehicles, I guess.
Okay.
They're fine, which is really all that really matters. Their home is fine, but yeah, they were impacted by the hurricane. So yeah, it's definitely very widespread. And, with the climate crisis that doesn't exist, these types of, once in a lifetime weather events are happening multiple times a year.
Yeah, my wife's sister and her husband they're living in Pasadena, and they just missed. But we were a little concerned about what's going on with them too. So it's really not good.
Right.
And it doesn't help the fact that Donald Trump and Republicans have been using this to make the situation a million times worse by lying and obfuscating and trying to earn some weird political cred from this whole thing. And okay, my first thought when I started seeing this was, I don't want to do the whole, let's not talk about this. How Republicans will always say after a school shooting or something like that, let's not try to politicize this.
Right.
You can critique, you can do stuff like that. They're just straight up lying, though. This is really gross and really messed up.
As par for the course under the Trump GOP, tons of conspiracy theories and lies are being spread about this natural disaster. Former President Trump, during a tour of the damage in Georgia, falsely claimed that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp hasn't been able to reach President Joe Biden to discuss the hurricane's impact on his state and to get assistance. Let's hear what he had to say while speaking to the press. I cleaned this up as best I could, but the audio sucks on this clip.
What do you think of Governor Kemp's response to the storm here in Georgia?
The governor's doing a very good job. He's having a hard time getting the president on the phone. I guess they're not being responsive. The federal government is not being responsive. but they're having a very hard time getting the president on the phone. He won't get on, and of course the vice president, she's out someplace campaigning, looking for money.
While essentially campaigning.
I mean, essentially, no. Like, he straight up is campaigning.
Yeah, at a natural disaster.
Which, we're going to talk about this later, but we should also just note his trip to Valdosta was not recommended by Kemp either.
Yeah, we will talk about that kind of at the end of this segment. We'll go over what the issues are there.
Yeah, so, but anyway, we'll move on for now.
Contrary to what the former president of the United States, who is currently running to once again be the president, has said, Georgia governor, the actual person that he's talking about, Republican Brian Kemp, told reporters a different story earlier that very day, before Donald Trump even made those remarks.
I just spoke. The president just called me yesterday afternoon. I missed him and called him right back. And he just said, hey, what do you need? And I told him, you know, we got what we need. We'll work through the federal process. He offered that if there's other things we need, just to call him directly, which I appreciate that. But we've had FEMA embedded with us since, you know, a day or two before the storm hit in our state operations center in Atlanta. We got a great relationship with them.
So,
yeah, that's
no,
a different
indeed.
story.
Yeah, he does not have a hard time getting a hold of the president.
No, it actually sounds like they were very proactive.
Right. FEMA was in contact before the storm was even there. And he even said, Vice President Harris, that they had been playing phone tag back and forth. They would miss each other because obviously they're both very busy at the moment. But there's no issue with communication between the governor of Georgia and the White House. I will say, probably because those two clips were being played back to back on every rational, non-crazy right-wing media outlet, showing that big surprise, Donald Trump is still a giant liar who lies about everything. Again, the Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, has now since come out to say that he was disappointed with the federal response and the number of counties that were declared a federal emergency, and claimed he had to reach out to the White House to talk to the chief of staff, and he had problems getting a hold of FEMA despite his previous statement that they were actually there before the storm even arrived.
Right. And it's so weird because it's one of those things where like a toddler will like try to lie to get out of something, but they add way too much detail to it. Like, why did you go through all that trouble to add all the detail when you know you're lying? Like, you could have, as much as I hate to like give Donald Trump advice, like you could have just said, I heard he's having trouble getting a hold of the president. I don't know what's going on with that, but that doesn't seem great. And then move on. He made up a whole story, for God's sakes.
Right.
And that's not even the end of it, because Trump then also claimed on Truth Social that everyone was highly criticizing the Biden administration because of the horrible disaster efforts.
He posted to Truth Social, Kamala and Sleepy Joe are universally being given poor grades for the way that they are handling the hurricane.
Capitalized for some reason.
Especially in North Carolina, swing state that is trending towards Kamala Harris in the election. It is going down as the worst and most incompetently managed storm at the federal level ever seen before, but their management of the border is worse. MAGA 2024.
So now here's the real question for you, Jason.
That is a very poorly worded sentence, by the way.
Why is storm in quotes?
I don't know.
Does he think it's not a real storm?
Well, maybe he's with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we'll be hearing from shortly, and it's not a real storm.
But
ever seen before.
You're right. But same with the pattern as before. Actually, Republican governors in Virginia, Georgia, and South Carolina have all come out and applauded the Biden administration for being very hands-on right away.
Donald Trump also tried to accuse Democrats of only helping out Democratic areas while neglecting Republican ones.
Yeah, that's that North Carolina mention you heard in the Truth before, which also is just blatantly not true.
And most of the areas are Republican that have been hit the hardest by this storm.
Right. Well, and put a pin in this one specifically for our next story because it's going to be a doozy.
And even yesterday at a rally in Michigan, Trump started a new false claim that the Biden administration took FEMA funding to give to illegal immigrants in exchange for votes.
They stole the FEMA money just like they stole it from a bank so they could give it to their illegal immigrants that they want to have vote for them.
What?
All those illegal immigrants who can vote in U.S. elections.
Okay, I'm legit surprised. I thought I was going to hear the transgender surgeries again. They stole it like a bank, huh?
Yeah,
Or stole it like money from a bank.
It's of course not true, but it's possible. You know, Trump is getting up there in age. He's
just not with him, man.
Yeah, he's clearly not the same guy. His mental faculties are not really where they should be. I don't know if he knows where he is anymore. He's probably just getting, what's currently going on with the Biden administration confused with what he did in 2019, which was divert $217 million in funds, including $155 million from the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund to pay for immigrant detention centers.
Cool.
That is the only stealing of funds from FEMA to go towards immigration in a way.
Cool. And can we just also note the absolute disingenuous claims that are being made about Biden not doing anything because he wasn't physically there for a lot of the stuff?
Yeah, that is the criticism being leveled right now. Where's Joe Biden? Where is he? How come he's not in Georgia? How come he's not in North Carolina? Well, honestly, high-profile political delegations hamper rescue efforts because they divert limited police and infrastructure resources, have to shut down roads to allow motorcades through when half the roads are shut down anyway.
Right, to protect the president.
Right.
Well, and
they have to get police escorts. They have to have extra security. The Secret Service has to be there. They have to bring all these people in for what amounts to a publicity stunt.
Right.
What is the 80-year-old president, whether it's Trump or Biden?
He's going to lift like a couple of boards and that's it.
What are they going to do? What are they going to clear? Who are they going to help? Is he going to throw paper towels at people again?
But that's where I get really upset because who's the reporter for Fox? Is it Peter Ducey or is it Steve? Who's the dad? Who's the son?
Right. I think Steve Ducey's the dad.
I think Peter's the son. Whatever. Who cares? Yeah. We'll call him the Deuce. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve's the dad.
Because in an interview or during a press conference, Ducey comes out and says, "Why weren't you there? Why weren't you?" Again, trying to do the gotcha thing. Why weren't you helping? Aren't you doing anything about this? You should be doing something about this. And Biden just came out saying dude, I was on the phone for the last 9 hours with people. What are you talking about?
Right. That's what.
Why aren't you commanding it? You should be commanding. You should be there to command it. It's called a phone, man. I was commanding it.
Right.
And it's oh, cool. So Republicans, you just want a performance.
Right.
You don't want actually things to get done. You just want to pretend like things are getting done.
Right.
Because boy, does that speak volumes for you.
And what was Donald Trump doing there? He's
Nothing.
Not the president. He can't coordinate anything.
Right.
And you know who he was there with? He was touring with the evangelical anti-LGBT hate group Samaritan's Purse, run by Franklin Graham, son of anti-Semite Billy Graham. Franklin Graham makes millions of dollars a year as the president of his family's multiple so-called charities. That is who Donald Trump was with for these tours. So all of these supplies and everything
it's truly
that
helping
he brought,
the people. Yeah.
He did none of that. That was an evangelical group who makes their volunteers sign anti-homosexuality and anti-gay marriage statements before they can do any work for their charity.
Great. And to make things even crazier, let's talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Because I think as of yesterday, she created a couple of headlines by tweeting out a map of the southeastern United States saying, this is a map of hurricane. I'm going to read it verbatim. This is a map of hurricane affected areas with an overlay of an electoral map by political party. That shows how hurricane devastation could affect the election.
Sorry, I actually prefixed that because yes, it did have some grammatical errors in there that I couldn't stand looking at. So I fixed it for you.
Oh, thank you.
Before you read it.
Thank you. And literally what she did was she posted a picture of what we talked about before of the electoral map of the southeastern United States. And see, these are all Republican areas.
Right.
They're trying to
the southern United States.
Yeah, they're trying to get us or something. And then when people promptly called her out saying, what the hell are you talking about? This was a hurricane.
Right.
She later tweeted saying, yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done. Okay.
Yeah, crazy.
This person has power.
Yes.
Legit power.
Right. She has
Power we will never have. Jason.
because she agreed to vote for Kevin McCarthy to be the Speaker of the House, she was put on a number of committees. She should not be anywhere near local government, let alone the federal government.
Yeah, I agree.
And she thinks that Jews fire space lasers to start wildfires in California, and now that Democrats control hurricanes to suppress the vote.
Well, not just hurricanes,
a month
all
early.
all weather. We control all the weather, apparently.
Who controls the hurricanes? We do. We do. All-time great Simpsons episode, by the way, the Stonecutters.
Perfect.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is insane. She is the perfect representation for the modern GOP. Conspiracy theories, insanity, delusion, it's all there. That's their target voter. That's their representative. That's the future of the GOP as it stands today.
I agree. And these conspiracy theories have gotten so bad that even Republican State Rep Kevin Corbin of North Carolina had to plead on Facebook for people to stop all the conspiracy theories and stop calling his office for stuff. I just included the entire thing here. Jason, you want to read it?
Sure. Friends, can I ask a small favor? We all help stop this conspiracy theory junk that is floating all over Facebook and the internet about the floods in WNC, I assume Western North Carolina. Example, FEMA is stealing money from donations, body bags ordered but government has denied, bodies not being buried, government is controlling the weather from Antarctica, government is trying to get lithium from Western North Carolina, stacks of bodies left at hospitals, and on and on and on. Please help stop this junk. It is just a distraction to people trying to do their job. Folks, this is a catastrophic event of which this country has never known. It is the largest crisis event in the history of North Carolina. The state is working nonstop. Department of Transportation has deployed workers from all over the state. Duke Power has 10,000 workers on this. FEMA is here. The National Guard is here, and in large numbers. My Senate district is 8 counties, and it takes 3 hours to drive across it in good weather. And this disaster is 25 counties in North Carolina. This is going to take months, if not years, to overcome. Government will play a role in this cleanup. We are going to make sure the state chips in some massive money. But government is not the total solution. He is a Republican. Yes, there are lots of neighbors helping neighbors, and that's good and the way it should be. Please don't let these crazy stories consume you or have you continually contact your elected officials to see if they are true. I just talked to one senator that has had 15 calls today about why we don't stop fill in the blank. 98% chance it's not true, and if it's a problem, somebody is aware and on it and not waiting for a post to go through 10,000 people to be addressed. Thanks for listening, but I've been working on this for 12 hours a day since it started, and I'm growing a bit weary of intentional distractions from the main job, which is to help our citizens in need.
Okay, so first off,
There's a little Jimmy Carter there.
I need to tell you how much I hated the fact that you ended almost every sentence with an upward inflection. Oh, I think I learned something worse than ending everything with an upward inflection, and that's a Southern accent ending everything with an upward inflection. But yeah, I mean, like, okay, so it's getting so bad that you have people calling in continuously to local officials saying, are they really trying to control the weather from Antarctica? Are they really trying to, what was it, mine lithium from
Western North
Carolina? What the hell is that?
It's gotten so bad. FEMA has had to put up a Hurricane Helene rumor response page.
Jesus Christ.
On their site to address the stream of insane conspiracies coming from Donald Trump and the lunatic GOP.
What the hell is going on, man?
So when FEMA should be focusing...
I mean, but we should have also predicted this because this is exactly what happened in COVID too. Mm-hmm. Like, there is no more, ever.
Yeah,
we'll never see, like, a national backing ever again of, like, even something that's, like, a natural disaster.
Right.
We'll never see it because every time now there's something that bad happens, immediately conservatives will jump to, what did the Democrats do this time? Or what are they secretly trying to do with us?
Right. Yeah. Our country is broken because of this conspiracy theory conservative nonsense. And it'll never be the same again.
No, it won't.
If we ever have a true existential pandemic.
Or like a threat to humanity thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're done.
We're done.
Yeah, there's no way. It will be undermined and sabotaged by those who know the real truth, and we'll all die, or at least most of us will. So hopefully it doesn't happen in my lifetime. I don't have any kids. Good luck, everybody.
And related to this story, I told you to put a pin in Donald Trump's comments about Biden supposedly being very partisan with his aid disbursement.
What do they say? Every accusation is a confession?
Yeah, basically. A new article dropped this week saying that an ex-official reported that Trump refused to give California any aid for their wildfires until staff had to basically sit him down and tell him that there were Republicans in California. I'm not joking. Grant, we had kind of heard about this before, even with the pandemic stuff too, where it wasn't like New York and California where I think what was it, Don Jr. or Jared Kushner that was suggesting that we didn't give any aid to New York or California because like they're all Democrats, so we'll let them all die out there too. Like this is a pattern. But from the article, Mark Harvey, who was Trump's senior director for resilience policy on the National Security Council staff, told E&E News on Wednesday that Trump initially refused to approve disaster aid for California after deadly wildfires in 2018 because of the state's Democratic leanings. He said, quote, "We went as far as looking up how many votes he got in those impacted areas to show him these are the people who voted for you."
Because otherwise he was not going to help them.
No, and the article goes on to basically say,
which is his job as the, like, literally his sacred responsibility as the president.
Yes, and they literally had to show him, hey, people in Orange County are Republicans.
Right.
Oh yeah, okay, I guess I'll stop them from burning alive.
Right.
Jesus, dude.
That is someone who should have never been and should never again be president. It's just that simple. It's not complicated. It's not difficult.
Right. And the fact that this isn't getting more attention pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like, this, again, I know we keep saying this over and over again because no one cares anymore in our countries, but we just talked about this. I get it. This alone should be the game for Donald Trump if we lived in a normal society.
Mm-hmm. If we lived in a rational, sane country.
Right. This is it. Literally, a president saying that he's not going to actually like help innocent people in our country because they may have voted against him.
Right. Because they live in a state which generally votes for the other party.
Right.
And only when he was shown electoral maps.
So that he could protect the Republicans.
Right.
The dude is insane.
I mean, impeachment should have happened then and would have been warranted. That is treason against the American people.
My God, no kidding. That's just another normal day. Let Trump be Trump. Or what was it? Sorry. Let me Ben Shapiro for a second. Oh, of course we grade Donald Trump on a curve. Screw you. Oh, God. Stop making excuses for this guy.
And in news to further heighten your blood pressure, conflict is now escalating between Israel and Iran. Following the Israeli terror bombing campaign in Lebanon that we covered last week, and now a quote-unquote limited, according to Israel, ground incursion into Lebanon, Iran has launched approximately 180 missiles into Israel, most of which were intercepted by American and Israeli defenses, with only 2 minor shrapnel injuries reported. There was also reportedly a Palestinian man killed in the West Bank that was blamed on a missile casing unluckily falling on him.
Oh, Jesus.
So, like always, who suffers in these conflicts? The Palestinians, once again, even when it's Iran supposedly trying to defend them, we end up with the only casualty being a Palestinian. And unfortunately, this shows that the Biden administration and U.S. decision, because again, it's not like Trump would have made it any different. It would be much worse. Their decision to do nothing to restrain Israel in their Palestinian genocide is making things worse by the day, as this is quickly turning into a regional conflict which threatens to pull in much of the region and the U.S. The Biden administration has already began sending in thousands more military personnel for security reasons, including fighter jet and attack aircraft squadrons and their support staff, bringing the total number of American soldiers in the region to around 43,000. This is a conflict which is threatening to get out of hand. Not that it isn't already and hasn't been for quite some time for the Palestinians. I guess to say something positive, it's getting more international and media, like mainstream, even right-wing media attention.
Sure.
Because when Joe Biden was asked about Israel potentially targeting Iranian oil fields as retaliation, it spiked the price of oil briefly.
Yeah, I saw
So that's
that.
what we care about. If you're Forbes, if you're, all those major political
But not the tens of thousands of lives lost.
Right. Yeah, not the ongoing genocide.
Will my gas prices go up, though?
Not the occupation for dozens of years, the essential, concentration camps. But yes, this might make gasoline prices go up. That's what we're focused on. That's what seems to actually move the needle.
What a joke this is, man. It like you said, just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And I mean, I'm going to keep saying it as well. And you said it before, Donald Trump would be way worse. That's without question. But this is an absolute travesty.
Yeah, this is an American problem. It's not a Democrat or Republican problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem with the overall stance of America when it comes to the treatment of the Middle East, and specifically Israel. That's the bottom line. It's not... There are some politicians who are very good on these issues, and they are all in the Democratic Party or independent caucusing with the Democrats.
Right.
So if this is the issue for you and you want to use your vote as some kind of message, you need to look for those politicians that do support Palestine and Palestinian rights and freedom and help them to get elected. You don't need to not vote or vote for a third party which has no chance, like in a presidential election. That does not send a message.
This is why we should also care about primaries. A lot of people that were very, very good on this came into Congress because they primaried a moderate opponent. And now a bunch of those people are now out of Congress, not because they were beat by a Republican, it's because they were beat by moderate Democrats.
Or conservative Democrats.
Sure.
And a lot of which are funded by AIPAC Israeli money.
Yes.
Specifically because they support Palestinian freedom and autonomy.
Right. So keep that in mind as well. The best way to gain power over and over again is to win power within the big party of the Democrats, right? Don't try to just say, I'm just not going to vote for anything. No, that's not how you do it. That's not how you get power.
Yes, you need more people that agree with you
in your party.
Yeah, in the Democratic Party. That will give them a bigger voice.
Right. And use Joe Biden as an example on this. Granted, this is not the topic to use for the example, but Joe Biden was much more moderate and conservative than what he was now. And it's because the party has pushed him over the decades to the position he's in now.
Yeah, we talked about last week the Unity Coalition that included Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren pushed Joe Biden left.
Yes.
When he became president. And that's why he has a lot of people in his administration that are much further left. Like we talked about last week, Lena Khan. You see Biden's stance on unions. Listen to any of his speeches. Includes a lot of left-wing talking points. Much more so than you would have ever thought.
Come out of Joe Biden.
Right, when looking at the rest of his very, very, very long political career.
Correct.
And that's because there were people in power like Bernie Sanders, like Elizabeth Warren, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Rashida Tlaib. That's who you need to keep supporting.
Correct.
And we keep losing people like Jamal Bowman, like Cori Bush. Those are the elections that matter. And trust me, you've got someone like that in your area. They might need supporters. They might need help. They might need volunteers. That's where, if you focus your energy, you can make this kind of difference.
Right. So if you want your money to go to something that's much more meaningful and impactful, that's where it would go to. I don't want to take away anything from Kamala Harris, but your $20 ain't going to do a damn thing in the presidential race, but they'll do a lot more in local races.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy, ain't right.
For Fox in the Head this week, we have two very fine people on their side who clearly haven't done anything bad. You know why, Jason? They're Christian. And I know that Christians don't do anything bad. This is technically an update to one of our stories from last week about the Haitian residents in Springfield, Ohio, filing criminal charges against J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. Last week, Republican congressperson from Louisiana, Clay Higgins, because of course his name is Clay Higgins, tweeted out one of the most horribly racist things about this situation yet. Quote, LOL, these Haitians are wild, eating pets, voodoo, spelled wrong, by the way.
It's spelled like the TV channel.
Yep. Nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere. Cults, slapstick gangsters, but damned if they don't feel all sophisticated now. Filing charges against our president and VP. All these thugs better get their mind right and their ass out of our country before January 20th.
I want to fight Clay Higgins right now.
You and me both, my friend.
Nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere. Yeah. And who made it that way?
Well, and even then, that actually has like nothing to do with the situation at hand. Where at least eating pets and like voodoo were like part of the insane, crazy discourse that was around Springfield, Ohio. So like, you know what I'm saying? That can at least logically make sense.
The condition of Haiti itself was also very much a part of this. Everyone taking shots at Haiti for being a poor country, which again, it wasn't hundreds of years ago before it got absolutely raped and pillaged by the Western world, including the United States, probably one of the largest contributors, and France and Britain and Spain. So to take those shots is really disgusting, especially from someone from Louisiana. You would still be a French territory if it wasn't for Haiti winning their independence from France and France no longer needing to produce food for the most rich and profitable territory in the Western Hemisphere, which was Haiti. Because they no longer had control over Haiti, they no longer needed the Louisiana territory, and that's why they sold it to the United States. So the fact that you are an American citizen, you have to thank the people of Haiti for that. You absolutely racist, cracker-ass, honky piece of shit.
What's a slapstick gangster?
I don't know. But I'd like to try it out on Clay Higgins if I ever met him.
So if that wasn't bad enough, of course this is an established pattern for this guy. Keep in mind, this is the same Clay Higgins that also proudly talked about voting for KKK leader David Duke as governor of Louisiana.
I'm sure they're very good friends.
I'm sure they are. Allegedly held a gun to his ex-wife's head during an argument.
She's just property anyway.
And attacked and then lied about attacking a black man while working as a cop. Because of course he's also a cop.
Yes, and I'm sure that was just a thug who wasn't in his right mind. Slapstick gangster, maybe.
Now, while we would hope that everyone would distance himself from this guy, we're dealing with Republicans. So of course they didn't, and of course they apologized for the whole thing. And this is where the actual Fox in the Head segment comes from. Not even that tweet was the point of this segment. It's this next part. I need you to understand how insane that is. Because when asked about Higgins and his horrible statement, House Speaker Mike Johnson had this to say, quote, Clay Higgins is a dear friend of mine and a colleague from Louisiana and a very frank and outspoken person.
AKA racist.
He's also a very principled man.
AKA Christian.
I think I didn't even see it, but he tweeted out something today about Haitians, and he was approached on the floor by colleagues who said that was offensive. I just talked to him about it, and he said he went to the back and he prayed about it, and he regretted it, and he pulled the post down. That's what you want a gentleman to do. I'm sure he probably regrets some of the language he used, but you know, we have to move forward. We believe in redemption around here.
He deleted the post, man. What else do you want? That's because Jesus told him to.
He prayed to Jesus, and now he's forgiven.
Yep. He still feels the same way. He's got this repeated pattern of feeling this exact same way. It's just we don't want him to actually express it so publicly and in the open.
Jesus Christ, man.
We don't come to the House floor with the sheets on.
Do you think they're like aware that they're doing this?
They've been doing that, using Christianity as a shield for racism. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It's quite a long history of that.
Ugh. These are just the literally worst people of all time.
And they'll tell you, how can you be moral?
Right, exactly.
Without religion.
No, not even just without religion. It's without their specific interpretation of their specific religion. That's their problem. Because again, Mike Johnson is a hardcore evangelical who also believes that Catholics are not real Christians. So like, let's be real here. He is on the weirdest, narrowest moral island that you can have. To the point where he has to have freaking like Covenant Eyes software where his son has to look through a porn history or his like internet history to make sure he doesn't have porn going on. And this mofo is going to tell us that he's more moral than anybody else.
And that he spoke to Jesus and that he's the new Moses.
Oh, I hate it. And this is why people are leaving Christianity in boatloads, and they're still doing it. This is exactly what you get with Christianity today. It drives me up a freaking wall. And this is also why I get really annoyed when I hear people conflate being a Christian with being a good person still. It drives me nuts because we have so many times people like Mike Johnson making excuses, using his religion to just let crap like this slide over and over again.
And religion aside, people, stop voting for obvious bigots.
Yes, my God.
And we don't have to worry about what church they worship in or what their interpretation of the Bible is. They can go yell on the street corner with a sign like the other crazies.
It's okay. We'll just have people who think Democrats control the weather.
Well, they are also very religious.
Ugh.
And also obvious bigots.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
On to the main topic of the day, the barn burner of a vice presidential debate that everyone is still talking about, can't stop talking about since it aired on Tuesday. Woo! How exciting was that? Oh my God.
I mean, here's the deal, man. You make jokes, but I'm still seeing lots of podcasts talk about this. And it's not because we're all starving for content right now.
And they just absolutely have to. That's not why we're doing this, because we said we would last week.
It's true.
So first off, I think...
before we talk about anything else with the debate, let's talk about this first.
Ahead of the debate, CBS made a decision based on a request from, surprise, surprise, the Republican Party and J.D. Vance to not have any real-time fact-checking from the moderators during the debate. I wonder why the Republican vice presidential candidate would not want anyone to fact-check him during the debate on TV. Instead, CBS decided to put a QR code in the corner of the screen that allowed viewers to go to CBS's website for fact-checks.
Thank you, CBS. What would we do without you?
Claudia Milne, the senior vice president for standards and practices, gag, at CBS News, told the New York Times, the idea is to give people that second screen experience. The audience can get the takeaway they need in a responsible and smart way.
Yep.
We can serve more ads if you go to this second site.
Yep.
And then J.D. Vance won't pull out of the debate.
Yep.
So
this is so dumb.
And disgusting. And just absolutely disgusting, gross pandering to a candidate to allow him to lie to the American people, to your audience, so that you can make money.
Yep.
We need to stop the way we're doing debates. They need to just all be made public, available to every station that wants to carry them, and have moderators that are nonpartisan, third party, have fact checkers, same situation. They can be agreed upon by both candidates ahead. I don't care. But we need to take profits out of this because it's destroying the debates. And it has destroyed.
It's a laughingstock.
Yeah. There's not going to be any other debates this cycle. Donald Trump says it's too late because early voting already started, even though we had multiple debates 4 years ago that happened after early voting started, which again, obvious lie. He just doesn't want to do it because he knows how bad he looked and he knows he cannot control himself. This was a farce.
Well, the fact checking was, at least.
Yes. I mean, what CBS did here to be like, oh, just scan the QR code with your phone and then you can miss what they're saying while you're trying to look up if what the last thing they said was true or not.
Yep.
So,
because this is how truth works now.
Yeah, it's just subjective. It's whatever you can get someone to believe.
So, with that out of the way, let's discuss some overall thoughts.
My overall thought was boring.
Yeah. This screamed to me like a typical non-Trump presidential debate.
Yeah, specifically, I think you may have misspoken, but I think you're still right. Presidential debate.
No, I did. I said that on purpose. Yes, I did. Okay,
perfect. We're on the same page here. Usually, the VP debate is the more contentious,
yes,
like attack debate.
Yes,
and then the presidential one, you want to come off off as looking more stately, more genial. You're the steady hand.
Yes.
So you don't do any of that. You try to appeal to the most broad base as you can. And that's what this was after the presidential debate, in which Donald Trump could not resist saying that they're eating the pets.
Yeah, you had a lot of...
They're eating the dogs.
You had a lot of J.D. Vance trying to basically make the argument that he was more liberal than people thought he was, and he wasn't like this radical extreme right-winger. You had Tim Walz also trying to go off say, well, no, we're pretty moderate too. Like, we have a lot of agreement on stuff. Both people were clearly playing to the center, and it was very weird for a vice presidential debate. When I was watching this debate, my gut reaction throughout the entire thing was this was just sane washing Trump and Vance. And I don't know if you'll remember this. This is a pretty niche callback, so forgive me. I think it was like in 2017, 2018. Do you remember back when it was still a thing, or at least when people still cared about it? Politicon?
The name is familiar, but...
It was like when people went to like a conference once a year to watch like influencers do politic blood sport, basically. Like just debate and just argue and yell at each other.
Okay, yeah, I do recall now that you said that, some of the debates that happened there, and specifically because I watch a lot of Majority Report.
Right, yeah. One of those years, I vividly remember a debate between the Young Turks' Cenk Uygur and Tucker Carlson back when he was still very relevant. And a lot of people were very concerned about putting Tucker Carlson on like the big stage and letting him spew his nonsense because of being Tucker Carlson. After the debate, a lot of people were so shocked that it was such a nice, civil, and cordial discussion. People could not get over the fact that Cenk Uygur and Tucker Carlson had such a nice, cordial discussion. And I know this is going to be a bad reference now because she also has lost her marbles. But I watched a video like afterwards, behind the scenes, where Anna Kasparian was trying to talk to like Cenk and others about how like this is bullshit. Like he's just pretending and performing to be a cordial person to get his nonsense ideas through and to make them more palatable. And the people and the guys all around her were basically saying, no, I think he was pretty genuine. This was a good discussion. This was a good discussion. And then clearly once the debate happened, Tucker Carlson just went right back to his insane Nazi rhetoric. That's kind of how I took this debate, where what scares me a lot, and I think we talked about this like maybe with Ron DeSantis a bit, but then he went absolutely crazy. He couldn't do it either. I'm terrified of Trumpism and like this far right-wing stuff said in a very calm and disarming tone.
Sure.
And I think that's what J.D. Vance did very well during the debate.
So I think both candidates had the same approach. They were both trying to appeal to the voters, potential voters, people that haven't decided, don't know if they're going to even vote yet, who feel like politics is too nasty, too mean, it's gotten too extreme, and it's too divisive. There's tons of those people.
Right.
Oh, I can't take. All they do is yell at each other.
I hate both sides. They're all bad.
They're all the same. And I heard it. I mean, all the things that I was watching, all my lefty political bubble was full of people that were angry that Tim Walz did not attack Vance more, did not call him out for all of his rhetoric, to say, what are you doing? To me, I get it, I understand, but I think it's wrong.
You think the mentality is wrong?
That idea that he should have been aggressive, been attacking, been the pit bull.
Yeah, or you said this right before we started recording, but I think maybe the best way to put it was, again, like a presidential debate typically, this debate was not for us.
Right, well, the reason why is because when your opponent is doing that song and dance of the, oh, why can't we all just get along? We're not so different, are we? And you are getting angry and yelling at them and calling him, a fascist and a Nazi and a threat to democracy and everything that's honestly true and what we kind of want to hear.
Yep.
You look like a raving lunatic.
Yes, to the uninformed person.
Right,
yes.
To the people that don't know why.
Yes.
You're doing all this because he seems like a nice guy. Why is Tim Walz screaming at J.D. Vance? He's just up there trying to give his positions, and this is what politics is, right? This is reach across the aisle, work together. That's what people who don't follow politics think.
I completely agree with all of this, by the way.
So he would have, looked better to us, looked better to the people that literally want to scream at the TV and call out J.D. Vance.
Yeah, or who want, what was it called? Like the Twitter called out or whatever it was called. Like you're trying to repost somebody to dunk on them. The Twitter dunk. There it is.
Right, the sound bites, all that.
Yeah, that's what they wanted.
It would not have attracted what they need, which is more votes.
Well, and I'd also argue, yes, that first. Here's a really hot take that I have that would piss off a lot of progressives, because I agree. Like, I have to give Tim Walz two different grades here. The grade for what I want is different from the grade of what I think was the best strategic decision. And clearly this was a strategic decision. I still think Tim Walz could have done a little bit more, but from a strategic purpose, I'd probably give him about a B-ish. I think he did pretty well accomplishing what their objectives were. For what I want, I'd say about a C.
Mm-hmm.
But
he did say he made friends with school shooters.
Yeah, that was pretty rough. But but besides that, it was, yes, there were things where he could have jumped on JD Vance for a lot. And I think that was like the biggest thing. He said, yes, we agree on a lot of things, even though he just said something insane. I completely understand that. And that's going to infuriate us like crazy.
But they have our votes and they know that.
But they're
not trying to appeal to us.
Right. But Tim Walz's objective, from what I'm guessing from my own experiences, his objective was to don't do anything that would damage the campaign.
Right.
Make the campaign boring and so that no one cares. Because remember, Kamala Harris is already winning. She is leading in the polls nearly everywhere, even though it's a very close race. The last thing we need is a blunder.
No fumble at the goal line.
Exactly. And he achieved that. It was boring. No one's going to care about this VP debate. And let's be real, no one was going to care about it anyway, but he made it less so. And number two, for the people that were going to care about this debate, you had to appear as approachable and welcoming as possible.
Right.
And he did that.
Mm-hmm. I think they both accomplished that. And we'll talk about that later, the polling and everything afterwards. But
what, again, this is going to be a theme for this entire episode. What infuriates me, though, is while that is the strategic way to do it, there were so many times during this debate where I would listen to what JD Vance said, like, that's just bullshit. You're just straight up lying right now. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even a good lie. It was just like saying the most outrageous things possible. And then I would want to go to find any of my moderate or centrist or like right-leaning friends and be like, smack them upside the head. Do you see this? This is stupid. Mm. But I know the takeaway is always going to be, what a good civil conversation.
Right.
And that infuriates me. Another takeaway I had was apparently Kamala Harris is currently the president right now, and she has the ultimate power to do anything.
Right. No Congress approval needed for anything. The Supreme Court's not an issue.
And she herself is the president. Like,
right.
The amount of times...
The Emperor of the United States.
The amount of times that JD Vance said the Harris administration was insane.
Well, if she wants to do that, how come she's not doing it right now?
What are you talking about? Like, do you know what the vice president... You're going for the job, my friend. Do you know what the vice president does?
Right.
And again, now this is where it just infuriates me, because that's something that Tim Walz should not and did not take the bait on, because the typical voter has no freaking clue what the vice president does.
And you just get into the weeds and you waste your time.
Right. Well, exactly.
Yep.
But to me, and to like other progressives like me, that sent me ablaze, because...
And and the thing is, you never want to tell the American people that you can't do that.
Right.
That's the thing. You know, like, yeah, we would love to, but it's just not possible to do that, because then they're like, oh, we'll see. They don't do anything anyway.
Right.
So yeah, you don't fall into that trap.
But again, that also sucks, because there was so much rhetoric where it just clearly showed me that JD Vance, I mean, Tim Walz too, but like, I'm specifically talking about JD Vance for the VP stuff, that he was clearly taking advantage, knowing that people don't know what he's talking about, and just making things up, knowing that people will not check him on it.
Well, and can't unless you go to the QR code. And not only does Kamala Harris have ultimate power as the Emperor of the United States, and why isn't she doing all these things if that's what she wants to do? Donald Trump was simultaneously never the president, because otherwise you would use the same exact argument for him. He was the president for 4 years. How come he didn't do any of these things that he wants to do? But also, he was the best president ever in the history of the world.
Everything.
Right. Did everything right. Perfect phone calls. And they still indicted him.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So let's get into the highlights. The first clip we have is talking about the Affordable Care Act, where JD Vance just straight up rewrote history to try to make Trump look like he saved the Affordable Care Act. Let's listen.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything, because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. It's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and health care costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better health care policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Yes, all 100% lies.
I'm like,
enrollment.
Jason, did you hear a single true thing in that statement?
Maybe that J.D. Vance has family members. I think that might be true.
Well, okay, no, actually, you're right. I believe he does have family members, and I'm almost positive, especially in Ohio, they probably had to switch off to private health care.
Right. And if they got private health care through, he says, because of the Trump administration, that means it was through the government portal, which is Obamacare.
Yep.
And enrollment was down under Donald Trump, the lowest, lower than it was during the Obama administration and lower than it is again now under Biden, because Donald Trump did everything he could to stop people from utilizing it. He saved it. Yes, obviously a lie.
Yes, can we talk about the whole he saved Obamacare?
We played the clips from the presidential debate in going through the history of Donald Trump's own lies about his health care plan. He claimed to have gotten rid of the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, even though he didn't, but he certainly tried multiple times and did everything he could to weaken it. And it was only because John McCain refused to vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act that we do still have it, despite Donald Trump's best efforts. And Donald Trump criticized John McCain multiple times after that.
Yes, he did.
And, he worked in a bipartisan way. Not one single Democrat voted to repeal Obamacare.
Nope. In fact, it was bipartisan the other way.
Yes. Republicans voted against repealing Obamacare.
So yeah, that was a wild one for me. I was not expecting the Trump saved Obamacare story.
Well, and he's not going to have a 900-page plan on the podium. He's been promising that this plan was coming in 2 weeks for 9 years. 9 goddamn years. And he can't come up with a plan. But it's just around the corner. Yeah, he's not going to give you all the details on, but it's coming. It's coming. Trust us. We've heard that, JD. We've heard that dozens of times now. It's all lies. And speaking of lies,
that brings us to the glorious fact check moment, because while CBS was not going to fact check during the debates,
they clearly had some prepared statements because they knew the lies were coming.
Right. And this happened during the discussion on immigration and specifically mass deportations, which I would also argue was a somewhat difficult conversation. I mean, immigration was a pretty difficult issue for both Kamala and Tim Walz, but specifically the mass deportations, I think, was a very tricky situation for Tim Walz to try to navigate, because they're talking about how a bunch of, it was like half Americans, even Democrats, want mass deportations. I'm like, cool. Half of Americans are racist as shit. Awesome. Thank you.
And they believe the lies that are being told by everyone at this point.
Right, exactly. But anyway, so Governor Walz brings up Vance's rhetoric about Springfield, to which Vance responded with a bunch of nonsense and gets simply corrected.
With, again, a prepared statement because they knew this was going to come. This is not a live fact check. This is something they had ready to go. They did not look this up in response to what was said.
Right, and this is a slightly longer clip because it includes some context before then, so just listen to the whole. I think it's like 3 minutes long. Forgive me.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
Okay, first, just cut the mics right from the start.
Yep.
Stop letting him talk. When he's talking over you, you're the goddamn moderator. You can cut the mic right away.
Yep.
Problem solved. Second, he gives it away.
Oh, really? You think so?
This is the truth about a lot of Republican policies. He calls it illegal. He said it allows illegal immigrants to become magically legal.
Yep.
They didn't have to wait for 10 years for a green card.
Yep.
Which is what he wants. He wants the system to be broke and not work and make you wait 10 goddamn years before you can enter the country. That's what he wants. That's what the GOP wants, which is what leads to the situation we're in when people are willing to risk illegally coming into the United States because the system is impossible to do legally, unless you're rich, white, etc. He is not saying that the system didn't exist, right? The law was there from 1990, as Tim Walz pointed out. Yeah. It's not a new law. But Democrats made it convenient. They made it easy to apply for this status. And it's not magical. It's not anyone who applies for it can get it.
It's literally the legal process. And there was an interview I was listening to, I think from the New York Times, with literally the person who actually controls the points of entry for the federal Biden administration. And he was talking about how I think it's like less than 20% of asylum applications get accepted.
And again, Haitian immigrants were granted this special status because of the coup in Haiti, which had some U.S. backing.
Yep.
And the earthquake in Haiti in 2011, which most of the funding was very much mishandled by the American-sponsored government in Haiti. Again, I'm giving away this Haiti episode we're going to do in the future, but it's coming, trust me. This is disgusting. And like has been pointed out, fact-checked, whatever you want to call it, prepared statement, Tim Walz tried telling him.
And that was such a weak, supposed fact check, too.
Right. It's just something they had ready because they knew this was going to come up. And they knew that he was going to call them illegal immigrants when they're not.
Correct.
And he refuses. I don't care. I don't like the way they did it. I don't like them. I don't like their culture. I don't like what they're poisoning the blood of America.
Yeah. It's just he doesn't want them here.
And I'm going to keep calling them illegal. And I'm going to keep spewing hatred towards them and bringing violence into their community because I do not agree with it. Because I feel like the system was too easy for them to come here from a country that has been ravaged by the Western world and have nothing and get a job, right? So they're stealing our jobs. You come from halfway around the world, you get a job, you rent or buy, right, a home. Yep. They're stealing all our the housing crisis because all the immigrants. You contribute to society. And now you have to deal with wondering if your kid's school is going to blow up, if the hospital is going to blow up, if you're going to be murdered on your way to or from work or at the grocery store.
By some crazy guy with a MAGA hat on.
Because the Republican candidate for president and vice president are a bunch of hateful racists that are using this rhetoric to try to drum up votes from more racists.
And so this was probably like the second most talked about clip. The first one is the one that we're going to get to in a little bit, but this one's probably the one that made me the angriest for multiple reasons. Number one, this is exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to sanitizing and sane washing JD Vance and Donald Trump. You heard, and Jason, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but he was talking about, all I wanted to talk about was that housing prices are going up in Springfield, Ohio. My residents are concerned and things are kind of tough right now. Like, no, that is not what you freaking did.
And Walz did briefly mention that it's because of investors and hedge fund capitalists and venture capitalists like JD Vance. That's the problem with the housing in Springfield. He didn't really focus on it, but again, I don't know that that's something
that's more in the weeds.
Right.
But
that people really know that much about, but he is aware of it.
But this is where it made me so angry when Tim Walz says, I'm sure he really does want to fix this. No, he doesn't. He straight up doesn't. And you can probably really call him out on that without sounding like a maniac. This was one of those things where I got really upset.
So what they both said it. So let me just give you my opinion real quick on that tactic. He's saying, yes, I truly do believe, again, they're both playing the I'm just concerned for the people.
Right.
I don't care about Republican, Democrat.
Right.
I just want to do the best. They're both playing that part.
Yes, they are.
And they both said, if you listen to both of their answers, they said, yes, no, I trust me. We're on the same page. You're a nice guy. I'm a nice guy.
Correct.
We both want to do, but your running mate is a raving lunatic who just wants to destroy the planet. That's the tactic they were both taking.
Well, and that's what makes me so freaking angry about Tim Walz, though, because this is just one example of it. All throughout the debate, which is also, I think, why people think JD Vance won the debate, is that Tim Walz tried and I would disagree with that, by the way, but just saying, there are people who do. And he would just do this nice guy routine, and JD Vance would do this nice guy routine. Tim Walz would go like, yeah, I agree with you. And then all of a sudden, JD Vance just turns around and just sucker punches him, and Tim Walz isn't ready for it. You can still do that exact same nice guy thing and not say, oh yeah, I think he really wants to solve this. You could say, hey, I understand there may be concerns right now, but what you did was not wanting to solve this problem. By spreading rumors that people were eating cats and dogs was not trying to solve this problem. I don't know where you got that idea that was okay from, because that's not helping anybody. And you know that's a lie, and the Republican governor said that was a lie, and just hammer him on the point and just not let that go.
It's that, though, that people don't like, the hammering.
Sure, but you can do that in a nice way, though. I know you can do that in a nice way.
He kind of did.
Not really. He let it go. Like, he legit.
If you listen to it, though, he said all of the things you want him to say.
After he gave him a nice glowing endorsement saying,
I know, but that's but you have to put up that front.
But now we officially sanitize eating cats and dogs as a point, as like, oh, that's just part of the political minutia now. Like, you can't let that go. That's how this shit gets worse over time. You can, I totally get where you're coming from, but then at the same time, you can't let that shit go. And this is why I'm also upset with the freaking debate moderators, because I get, again, they have a lot of stuff to go to. I get that they have a schedule they want to get to. This is also why I freaking hate presidential debates, man, because if we were in any realm of truth or reality, we would never get off that one point. The fact that a leading candidate and VP candidate for president of the United States spread intentional lies about American residents eating cats and dogs, and then continue to double down, triple down, and quadruple down when tried to be called on it.
Well, and also said that they're destroying the economy of a city in which they are actually helping.
Right. But no, and as you clearly heard, like, the moderates also wanted to get away from that topic as well. They're like, oh no, we're going to move on to the economy. Right. We're moving on to the economy. Why? Why are we sanitizing this? It made me very, very angry, as you can tell. And again, like, I get that Walz did the best he could, and I'm not going to hit him too hard on, but like, that's the type of crap that Republicans get away with so many times, where they'll just say the most insane things on a national stage, and because it's not properly called out, a bunch of idiots will normalize it as just a part of the controversy. Ugh. All right, we're moving on. Now, I don't have a clip for this one, but when discussing Trump's tax cuts,
yay,
Vance said that they, unlike other Republican tax cuts, helped the middle class more than anything else. He also said of the economists who criticized Trump's economic plan, quote, they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense. Vance. So great.
Criticizing the experts.
Yeah. Because we common people, we know more than these academics.
J.D. Vance, the corporate lawyer and venture capitalist.
Yeah. Ugh.
And the whole point about Trump's tax cuts helping the middle class.
I mean, that's just nonsense.
Yeah, any tax cut that actually went to anyone that was not in the top earning bracket has already expired. The only tax cuts that are still around from the Donald Trump administration, which Republicans and some conservative Democrats have done everything they could to protect with their lives, are the corporate tax cut, the largest corporate tax cut in American history, which we talked about a lot last week.
Yep.
And the tax cut for the wealthiest Americans. That is it. Those are the Trump tax cuts that cost over $1 trillion a year in lost taxes in America. That's all they are. There is no Trump middle class tax cut.
Right.
It does not exist.
Right. And in fact, actually, a lot of people, well, I wouldn't say a lot, I say the vast majority of middle class people actually saw tax increases because of those tax cuts as well. So that's where it also makes me really angry when we even have to try to talk about these damn tax cuts, because literally it's not just tax cuts like how people think they are, where everyone just gets their taxes slashed. It's raising the taxes on the middle class to help pay for the tax cuts of the wealthy.
And that is, Trump's plan, aka for his economic plan for the future, is more tax cuts for the wealthy. He has promised this to his wealthy donors at multiple events already.
On record, videotaped and everything.
Yep. It is adding tariffs to most imported goods, which he keeps saying are going to be paid for by the countries that are importing goods, but that's not how tariffs work.
Nope.
They're paid for by the people purchasing those goods. So it would, yes, indeed be, as the Harris campaign keeps saying, a tax, because to buy those goods, you will have to pay more.
Correct. This is the Trump wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it all over again.
Yes. And he also wants to give a bunch of federal land to oil companies so that they can defile the natural resources which belong to everyone in the country and make billions and billions more dollars in profit. And that somehow that will magically be passed down to all of us. Because can you imagine, we'll open up these federal lands to the oil companies and the price of gas will be a nickel.
God, you're saying it was almost like it's a wave of a magic wand that we get.
It's something that never
economics.
happens. Corporations get more profits and somehow the money is passed down. That is the trickle down economic plan from Reagan that never worked.
Nope.
All it does is give more profits to the corporations, who then increase their prices to get even more profits, because it's a never-ending cycle. That is the only way your stock price will ever go up, is if you have more profit than you did previously. Always, 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 always. That's the way capitalism works. That's why it's broken. That's why things never change, because that's the system. That's the game. You can never make less money. So letting oil companies have larger profits will just mean that they will search for even larger profits in the future, because they legally have to. It's their fiduciary responsibility. So yes, Trump's economic plan sucks for the American people. You know who it's great for? Oil companies, real estate developers like Donald Trump, and the ultra rich like Donald Trump and like his donors. That's what his second term would be. One, probably the end of our democracy. Two, a huge payback for his donors.
Yep.
And a giant screw to everyone else, including most of his base, but they're a bunch of dumb hicks who can't seem to realize this.
Well, remember, he was going to let a bunch of Californians burn because he thought they were all Democrats out there.
Now let's move on to what should have happened to Donald Trump: abortion.
During the abortion topic, Vance said it should go back to the states. Like Trump said, nothing too crazy. This was actually a pretty boring discussion overall. He also claimed he never supported a federal ban, which, yes, he did.
It was on his campaign website. He said it multiple times on multiple different interviews and podcasts.
Well, and the moderators literally quoted him right before he answers and said, no, he never did. And again, while Walz, I think, did well, I feel like he left a bunch on the table. And that's, again, going back to the theme of, like, he was just trying to play the nice guy. He said what he needed to say. He definitely did the human rights should not have like a state's issues thing.
Right. Your rights should not end at the border.
Or like with your geography or stuff like that. He brought up multiple specific stories of women, one who died because they're like in Texas. So I I thought he did really well. It was kind of more of the same. So nothing too standouty, I guess, in my opinion.
I'll have more to say in a little bit on this, but let's move on.
So I think this was the biggest thing that came out of.
Yeah, it was immediately on all the ads for the Harris campaign.
Right. And I also like, this isn't really the spot to add it, but because it kind of jogged back to my memory. I think this was also one thing that you can say that Tim Walz did well in is that, I mean, even though this debate was going to be very forgettable at the end of the day, I think all of the clips that are really circulating are negative for JD Vance. I don't see a lot of like gaffes that feature Tim Walz that are circulating anywhere.
Well, that's,
which is good.
Well, that's the thing. When you're playing this game of, I have to be the nice guy because I don't want to look like a creep because everybody thinks I'm a creep.
Right. The point is to not get attention.
Yeah. It becomes so boring that no one's going to talk about, what you say,
Correct.
which is the kind of positive thing that came out of this.
Correct. But yeah, the big thing everyone was talking about was actually near the end of the debate when they started talking about the 2020 election. And the moderators brought up that JD Vance said he would not have certified the 2020 election results. So let's start with Vance's initial answer. And while I say it may be a little bit long, I want you to listen to how...
Been saying that a lot tonight.
I do, and I apologize. I want context.
It's the only time you've ever said that.
Yeah. It's okay. My wife doesn't say it either. It's fine. I want you to listen to how explicit the moderators are when they give details to introduce the topic and how JD Vance tries to weasel his way out of it.
After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship.
Censorship. That's the threat.
Your Honor. Well, my client may have gone to the bank armed with a sawed-off shotgun to rob that bank. As you can see from this security footage, he clearly was tackled by the security guard and then peacefully left that bank
in handcuffs.
I say no harm, no foul.
By 4 p.m., all the money was still in the vault anyway.
Just because Donald Trump was not able to successfully incite an insurrection to overturn the results of the election, and then after he was unsuccessful, he left office because what other choice did he possibly have? I wanted him to get dragged out by his feet. He's not gonna, what is he gonna do? Hang on to the doorway? Like, he had already tried and failed. He led
a literal coup of fake electors.
An armed mob to the Capitol building to storm in there, stop the certification of the election, kill Mike Pence because he would not go along with the plan and remain president. Like, that was his plan. We had testimony saying that Secret Service agents had to wrestle the steering wheel of the car away from Donald Trump because he wanted to go to the Capitol to be with that armed mob. It was only because there were people in his administration that prevented him from going through with this, as was very much pointed out there, unconstitutional and illegal plan that he definitely was trying to do, that he was prevented from remaining in office after losing an election for the first time in American history. That's never been attempted before.
But look, Jason, I want to focus on the future, okay?
Censorship is the real
Censorship is the real thing.
Let me answer your question since you asked it.
Censorship. I cannot imagine the balls to have that, which is like, yeah, my running mate who's running for president led an armed coup, but hey,
he wasn't successful.
You know what's really...
So let's all just move on.
You know what was really bad?
Kamala Harris and immigration.
People being banned on Twitter. He then went on to accuse Democrats of protesting election results for years, and he brought up the whole crap of like, well, Hillary Clinton said that Russia interfered in the 2016 election, and they protested those results.
Remember that attack on the Capitol that Hillary Clinton led in 2016? Everybody remember that?
Also, remember that gigantic report that came out like in 2018 that showed that Russia interfered in the 2016 election?
Remember she was like, Pokemon, go riot at the Capitol?
I was gonna say, now I just really want like an anarchist slogan or something like that, but also somehow for some reason sponsored by Pokemon.
This is where we really miss Michael Brooks. We do need anarchist Hillary Clinton. Somebody needs to do that bit.
Now, Tim Walz did call him on it and explicitly asked Vance if Donald Trump lost the election.
And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment.
And you didn't have it in here, but I did like Tim Walz's response of, I don't run Twitter.
Well, and guess who also didn't run Twitter in 2020? Kamala freaking Harris.
Oh, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy because he tried to overturn the results of a presidential election. What about the conservatives that were banned from spreading dangerous misinformation about COVID vaccine during a life-threatening pandemic that killed over 1 million Americans? What about that?
You missed one key piece of context there. During the Trump administration.
I love how this has morphed from the story started because the New York Post posted an article
about Hunter Biden and his laptop.
Biden's laptop that included nude photos of Hunter Biden posted without his permission. And the Biden administration asked for those naked photographs to be taken down because there are actual revenge porn laws in this country that say you can't do that. Because of that now, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden censored misinformation about COVID vaccines
on Facebook and Twitter
before they were in office.
Yep. And I'm sorry, wasn't there someone in there who was maybe in the White House that actually was called out during congressional hearings for literally reaching out to Twitter to take down
negative posts about
him
that were true
from like, I don't know, maybe celebrities like Chrissy Teigen?
From American citizens.
I mean, the BS is jaw-dropping. And again,
And you liked this, right? You said this is the one he pushed back on. Well, I will tell you the reason why is because this is the issue that those middle voters that don't like either candidate, the double negatives, don't like January 6th. And they think January 6th was wrong.
They do.
So that's the thing that you push back on because, again, those are the voters you're going after. They may hate immigrants and want immigrants deported, like they said during, I don't know what poll they took, but they said, well, most Americans
want mass deportations,
right?
Whatever.
So you don't push back against that. You don't want to do anything to negate those voters or have those voters turn against you. That's your mission. And do I agree with that? I would love for him to be like, you know what, JD Vance, you, Donald Trump, all of Donald Trump's kids, your crackhead mom, your wife, fuck both your kids and fuck everyone who looks like you. Yes, I would love for Tim Walz to go on stage and do that, but that's not going to accomplish the goal here, which is to win the most important election of my lifetime. And I'm okay with that. I don't know where we go from there. I've just created so much work for myself.
The good news is, at least from what I can tell, most people really hated JD Vance's answer there. And I think the fact that Tim Walz explicitly asked, do you think Donald Trump lost the election? And his answer was, Tim, I want to look towards the future. It's the most horrible, partisan, politically motivated answer you could ever give to any question ever. And I do believe that's so outrageous that I think people do see through that.
And it's something that only is important with the very fringe of the Trump base.
Right. And they still, that's a very good point, because even though I think it's a third of Republicans that still believe in this, which is, by the way, still way too big of a number.
Right, it's insane, but it's a GOP.
Like you said, that's a fringe thing to still care about at this point. And the fact that he still can't even say that Donald Trump lost the election
because he's not allowed to
is insane.
A guy who once said that Trump is America's Hitler. Now that he's on the Trump team, he cannot be honest.
Oh, it's so sad. What a pathetic little man.
So I know we're running really late at this point, and this is one of our longest episodes probably ever, but I want to really quick just go over two things that came up during this debate, which I didn't like the answers from either sides to, because I don't think they addressed the real problem, and I don't think it would have ostracized anyone to actually tell the truth on these things. So really fast, opioid addiction in America, right? That's the big thing on the Republican side. Fentanyl, immigrants are bringing fentanyl, Mexico fentanyl,
which is also another thing I want to do an episode on, by the way.
And it deserves it, but I'll give you the quick overview. The roots of opioid addiction in America, which is killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans.
We have plenty of issues here in Wisconsin, too, especially rural Wisconsin.
The roots of that can be traced to capitalism and a lack of government regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically Purdue Pharma and the marketing push for OxyContin, which is what started this, not the southern border and immigrants.
I believe there were two dramatic series, both I think, either on Netflix and then one on Hulu, literally about this exact story.
And the politicians never talk about this when this comes up.
Because they're donors of the Republicans.
Well, you don't hear it. I didn't hear it from Tim Walz. I don't hear it from Democrats either. You only hear
That's the deep state, man. It's the uniparty.
Yeah. It's like, stop blaming immigrants for problems that capitalism caused. And I get you're not going to say capitalism because then you're a communist.
But you can throw Purdue Pharma under the...
Right. Purdue Pharma and OxyContin, that's where the opioid crisis started. You have people hooked on that.
What's the family?
And then what happens when they don't have that prescription anymore? Now they got to go to the local dealer, and now they're hooked on heroin. And then heroin starts getting laced with fentanyl, and that's how you get all these fentanyl overdose deaths.
The Sacklers. That's who they are.
Yeah.
Throw the Sacklers under the bus.
Yeah, have their name on everything in New York and got a slap on the wrist as punishment for causing this crisis that we're all so worried about and we're blaming immigrants for. Also, from the DEA, China is the largest producer of fentanyl internationally, not Mexico. Mexico is second. India is third. All we talk about is Mexico. China and India. China produces more fentanyl. More fentanyl that gets into the United States is from China. From the Border Patrol. Fentanyl and its components, it's not like it all comes in like all they show during Halloween, the scary rainbow colored pills. It's usually coming in like powder, pill precursors to fentanyl so that it can be completed here. And like all the pill making apparatus and all that stuff often comes into the country via common trade pathways like air cargo, the postal service, courier services. It comes directly from China, India, Mexico, into the United States, not someone carrying it on their back. Like JD Vance wants to tell you, it's all, they tape it all over immigrants. All those little kids you see, they're all full of fentanyl. They're loaded with it. All the families that are trying to claim asylum, meaning...
are just sneaking fentanyl in across the border.
So if you're coming to declare asylum, that means you have to have an interaction with Border Patrol in order to declare asylum.
Correct.
And start that process. Why in the world would a multi-billion-dollar criminal drug smuggling organization, cartel, stick fentanyl on somebody who's going to walk up to the first border agent they see.
And just give it up.
Right. That's stupid. That's not how it comes over. You know who traffics?
But that's how J.D. Vance would do it, because because he knows about narcos.
Right. You know who traffics fentanyl across the Mexican border? American citizens, because it's much easier to do so. They don't get stopped as often.
Correct.
And you know who also runs fentanyl smuggling operations? Cops. You can look it up. They've been busted plenty of times doing this. Again, we'll do a whole episode on it, but again, then it's never brought up. They just let them say, yeah, it's immigrants bringing over fentanyl, and then the Democratic response is, yeah, that's why we want to spend all this money on tightening up the border. No, it's just not true. That's not how fentanyl is coming into the country. Our own government agencies have reports that have this information. It's very easily accessible. I don't see that alienating voters. If you were to just say, that's just not true. These families seeking refuge are not smuggling drugs. That's dumb. How many drugs could you really get through that way?
Well, they're just giving the game away. That's all it is, because they're so afraid to look weak. We fall for the same racist traps over and over again as Democrats.
And the other thing I wanted to, again, hopefully quickly, I didn't do that very quickly, but...
Well, you only have 1 point for this one, so maybe it'll be easier.
Late-term abortion. It always gets brought up, right? Democrats want to allow abortion up until past the time the baby's born. They just
past their born now.
He's trying to go to kindergarten. They just clock him in the back of the head like a baby seal. Why do women have instead of just saying like, oh, that's not true, why don't you just explain, even briefly, like I'm going to hopefully try to do now, why women have and need late-term abortions? Because their lives are in danger.
Yep.
This is a medical decision that either the child is dead or going to die and pose a risk to the health and life of the mother.
Which is usually advised by a medical doctor.
Right. The only person that could possibly make that decision, not a judge, which is what happens in Texas. And that's why that lady died. That's why all those stories exist that they want to point out and give you the names of the people.
Yep.
But they don't want to explain, what's actually going on when you talk about late-term abortions. These are not women that have carried a baby for 8 months and then just like, you know what, I don't really want it anymore. No, it's because their doctor told them this pregnancy is not viable. It is not safe for you to carry this child to term, or if you carry the child to term, it's going to be born and die. And that's why J.D. Vance talked about this. We don't have the clip, but trust me, he said there's a law that says in Minnesota that if the baby lives beyond the abortion, termination, whatever they're going to call it, the doctor doesn't have to provide life-saving measures. And Tim Walz said that's not true, but it probably is. Because if the child is going to die, so you have an abortion that's medically necessary because your kid is born without a brain, when it's born and is going to die, and is dying, do you want the doctor to pound the shit out of it like a tough steak in front of you when there's no chance of saving it because it's not medically possible?
Right.
That's what that law says.
Correct.
That yes, the doctor can allow that child to die peacefully. What happened to God as God intended?
Right. Exactly.
So I just want to get that out there because it bugs the crap out of me all the time when it's not brought up, it's not discussed, and I think it's important. And I don't understand why it's not mentioned.
So finally, this was a marathon. I think we talked about this more than the presidential debate.
I know. And I didn't think going into this, I was like, hey, there's nothing to talk about here.
I need to just clarify for both of us. We started this topic by saying that this was a boring debate.
And it's been the most animated we've been in a while.
Finally, will this debate matter? No.
No. It's not.
Which really doesn't give a lot of credence to how upset we were for the majority of this episode. First off, snap polls don't do a damn thing. That doesn't mean anything here. So everything I say with you, take with a grain of salt anyway. But most snap polls that we're seeing right now show that viewers pretty much think it was a tie. People are split between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance on who they think, quote, unquote, won the debate. Favorability of both candidates has definitely increased after the debate. I think it's worth noting that Walz's favorability increased to about 60%, while Vance increased to about 49%.
Walz went up more from what I remember, but J.D. Vance's was so much lower to begin with.
Right.
That you could make the argument that he still benefited the most.
If I had to say anything about this debate, it was that J.D. Vance is the one who took advantage of the debate the most, while Walz benefited but played it more safe. If that makes sense.
They had the same exact game plan. It was just, it's
because of the starting position. That's why. It's because J.D. Vance, like I said, it was so unliked beforehand. That's what happened.
Yeah, and we'll see if this holds. He's going to go back to, it's not like he's going to stick on this the rest of the way.
He's going to go back to buy donuts donuts again at some point. Right. He's gotta eat at some point.
He will pass a couch at some point. He's not going to be able to resist.
I truly believe at some point we are going to find some kind of picture with JD Vance inappropriately with his pants off. Like, that's going to be a picture we're going to see somewhere like on TMZ. I just know we will. Anyway.
Probably a dolphin nearby.
Walz was also seen as the more reasonable candidate according to polls during the debate, even though viewers were basically split on who was the most reasonable, but it's fine. I do think a good takeaway from this is that voters still do not like how Trump, Vance, and Republicans are talking about abortion and healthcare. In the CBS poll, abortion and healthcare were the two issues that showed the greatest difference in support between the two candidates, with Walz handily leading Vance from viewer support. Everything else was basically a wash, including things like economy and immigration, things that
are traditionally worse for Democrats.
Correct. So the fact that everything was basically a wash except for healthcare and abortion, I think really shows that abortion is very much still in the minds of voters today, and that's
I would
still
hope so.
I mean, I would too, but I don't trust the American public at all. So the fact that abortion is still top of mind for a lot of people at least gives me some relief knowing that that's going to go into November.
Can you imagine the terror of being a teenager in a red state, or even any, honestly, it doesn't matter what age, just being a woman who could potentially get pregnant in a state without any exceptions for abortion, and knowing that all it takes is for an ectopic pregnancy, right? An egg that gets stuck in the fallopian tube that gets fertilized. It will kill you. The baby has zero chance of survival. It won't even get anywhere near gestation. You will die long before that happens. And unless you have the resources and the time to travel to a state that allows you to get fundamental health care, you could die because of the state you live in.
Right.
Because Donald Trump elected 3 Supreme Court justices that all felt that their religious beliefs were more important than your life.
Well, and I think that's showing in more general polls. I think even including in the Marquette poll in Wisconsin that recently came out that showed Harris was leading by about 4 points now in Wisconsin. The gender gap is becoming very, very apparent in this election. I think now we're still showing like Trump and Vance are leading among male voters by about 10 points, and that Harris and Walz are leading from women voters by about 15 points.
Yeah, and honestly, men, get your heads out of your asses.
I mean, yeah.
Someone in your life, a woman in your life that you know has had an abortion. That's a fact. And you know what? Their lives are probably better for it.
Yeah.
And it's none of your business.
No.
And it never should be.
So, the grand scheme of things, we argued and got really feisty over a debate that meant basically nothing for this election, but we did it for the content.
And next week, we begin the case against Donald Trump.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. This is episode 136, recorded on Friday, October 4th from Milwaukee.